Hey, here's a second part of COVID-19 lesson in which we're learning what everyone's freaking out about. In this one, we're going to start to understand what needs to be done in order to make everything better. But first, I'd like to clear up a couple mistakes I made or things that I forgot to point out in the first video. First of all, New York here, you can see that that exploded as of yesterday as far as how many confirmed cases there were. Please understand that this is confirmed cases, and New York has been doing a better job of testing than anywhere else in the country. And that's why so many cases are showing up in New York right now. It's not necessarily that there's more COVID-19 in New York, it's that we know about the COVID-19 in New York better than we know it in the rest of the country. The second thing I'd like to point out is this right here. So, so here it said that Ebola had an R naught of 2 and SARS had an R naught of 4, and this current SARS or COVID in virus seems to have an R naught of between 2 and 3. So if that's the case, then why wasn't SARS such a big deal? SARS was going on about the time you guys were born, and there weren't nearly as many cases as there are of COVID-19. And it turns out that this is not right here. SARS did not have an R naught of 4. SARS had an R naught of somewhere between 1.1 and 1.3, whereas COVID-19 has an R naught of somewhere between 2 and 3. So it's 2 to 3 times more infective than SARS was, and that's why it's such a big deal. Next is this this modeling right here. There's something I wanted to point out. When you look right here, you can see that this many people got the disease. These are the people that didn't get the disease. What happened to the people that didn't get the disease? There weren't any anymore. Everybody got the disease. And then everybody either died or recovered, which is what this purple is right here. If you attempt a quarantine, you can flatten the curve in the beginning, but then your quarantine is going to fail eventually. And again, everybody's going to get it. And then they're either going to recover or die. Here's what we're doing right now. We're doing somewhere between moderate distancing and extensive distancing. And you can see that way less people are getting it. But what you can't see is that this curve is going to keep going and going and going and going until it merges with the amount of people that recovered. And this right here, this gap which represents people that haven't gotten it yet, is going to disappear. Everybody's going to get it. Same with this one with extensive distancing. It seems like this is great. Look, hardly anyone's getting it, but that's going to continue going on forever. And meanwhile, extensive distancing is extraordinarily hard on society and the economy. So I thought I'd point that out also. And then we'll continue where we left off. So here's China. Mainland China, you can see the number of cases went up to right around 4,000 or so and then dropped down. So they flattened the curve. They knocked it down, but you can see this lingering right here. So what that means is as soon as they stop these hardcore isolating measures that they've used, so they used police surveillance and what they call building managers, which are they're people who work for the Communist Party that are in charge of maintaining or in charge of operating these giant housing complexes. And between the police and the housing managers, there was a complete lockdown. Like, we're supposed to be in lockdown right now, but you go to the beach and it's packed. So there was none of that going on in China. It was a full-on lockdown, and they did in fact suppress the disease, but it's still there. So as soon as they open up and start letting people out, the idea is that it could come roaring back. Here's South Korea. They have knocked the curve down considerably also, but you can see it kind of like sloping back up right here. Here's how South Korea was so successful. They got hit pretty hard by SARS in 2002 and 2004. I mean, this is a picture from back then, these ballet girls performing in masks. So they still had fear in their society from that. And when the government told them what to do, they did it. And that's why this got knocked down so much. So what's the rest of the world look like? Let's check it out. So here is Italy ramping up big time. Here's Spain ramping. Here's Iran, which doesn't look too bad, but again, the testing isn't that great there. This is confirmed cases. Here's France ramping. Here's the United States ramping. Germany ramping. So all these other places in the world are somewhere between 3 weeks and 6 weeks behind where China was. So it's kind of like we get to see what's going to happen to us by looking at what happened to China. But of course, there's variables, including how much distancing is going on and how well we're locking stuff down. So what we want to do is what you've heard this in the news and stuff, flattening the curve. What even is it? Well, here's what it is. We need to use protective measures to slow down the infections in order to accommodate the capacity of our healthcare system. So here's what that means, the capacity of our healthcare system. If we exceed it, what that means is you end up with people not getting medical care who need it, and people who normally wouldn't die because they would be taken care of are going to die because there's not enough healthcare workers, there's not enough equipment to treat them. So that's what this means about flattening this curve. It means slowing down the infections such that our healthcare system can cope with it. So this is Italy right here, and this is patients inside of a hallway. They don't even have real blankets. They got emergency blankets. It exceeded Italy's capacity to deal with it. And this is northern Italy with some of the best healthcare in the world, and it exceeded their capacity to deal. So here's healthcare workers from around the world right now. You can see this equipment they're using to protect their eyes and to protect their lungs. This is called personal protective equipment, or PPE, and we only have so much of it. And in other parts of the world, and starting in the United States this week, we're running out. So this is a picture right here that a nurse took in Flint, Michigan, and they're being required they only get one mask per day, and they have to reuse it. And it's not like they're working their normal 8-hour shifts. They're working 12 and 14-hour shifts. They're not even shifts. They're just working until they collapse. So here, this is where the nurse wrote her name and then the date, and she has to reuse it. And of course, that's not cool because the entire outside of this mask is covered in virus particles, and you have to take it off and put it back on, and it's not a good thing. So here's Italy, and healthcare workers just collapsing due to fatigue and due to psychic fatigue. They don't have enough equipment to save everybody, so they're having to make choices about who is going to get the equipment and therefore be saved, and who's not going to get the equipment and therefore die. And that's horrible on your morale because you're having to live with that choice for the rest of your life. That. So What does this mean, this healthcare system capacity? Let me just show you guys what I'm talking about with that. In China, 5% of the patients that had COVID-19 required admission to intensive care units. And America only has so many of those. We've got 95,000 ICU beds and 62,000 ventilators, which is a piece of equipment that has been shown to save lives with this. And two-thirds of these beds and two-thirds of these ventilators were already in use before this COVID-19 thing even came to the United States, because we're right in the middle of cold and flu season, and we don't have those beds there for pandemics. We have those beds and ventilators there to take people that get sick at the rate that they normally get sick. So that's why we have to be careful not to exceed this capacity right here. So I got a little analogy for you here. Let's say you're getting attacked by bees and you just want to make it stop. If you keep getting attacked by the bees, you're going to be dead. So what do? You run and jump into a lake, but as soon as you lift your head up, they start stinging your head, so you have to stay underwater. And then that's great because you're not getting stung by bees, but guess what is happening? You're suffocating. So that's what's going on with America right now. By shutting the schools down, by shutting the restaurants down, by shutting the movie cinemas down, we're avoiding the virus. But what's going on is we're killing the economy, we're killing jobs, and we're killing our social structures. So we're kind of stuck right now. Here we are stuck underwater, and we can't come back up or the virus is going to get us. But if we stay down, then the economy gets destroyed. You guys might say, well, what's the big deal? Who cares about the economy? If you don't have a job, you can't pay rent. If you can't pay rent, you're homeless. So that's what's a big deal about the economy. So I'm going to stop right here. And next time we're going to talk about how to get out of this pickle.